I don't know what it says about me personally, but I tend to gravitate towards female characters in games. When given the option in linear games, I'll snap pick the girl. And sassy purple-haired bitches have been my status quo in RPGs for the better part of a decade. It might be that I think the traits commonly associated with femininity better define a character as an individual, while the masculine lean more towards a physically efficient Superman singularity that I can't help but find as interesting as a bucket of cold gravy. I've also heard it said that if you're going to have to stare at an ass for 20 plus hours, it might as well be one with some motivating curvature. Whatever the case, I guess I'll be squatting in the cargo hold of the starship Estrogen for the foreseeable future. You might think then that a game like Bayonetta will be right up my alley. It and its sequel were glitzy action romps from the glorified ADHD clinic that is Platinum Games, whose list of releases up until now reads like the lineup of a Saturday morning cartoon. I'd always perceived Bayonetta as an exemplar of the genre, rubbing shoulders with Devil May Cry and God of War. That is, before Kratos developed rheumatoid arthritis. So imagine my disappointment when I finally made time to play the original and found myself traversing banal lifeless stages and engaging in combat more visually and technically busy than sorting a kilo of Skittles while tripping balls on acid. And I'm no newcomer to spectacle fighters. It's just that better designed ones like DMC, which for the record I really liked, so all you white-haired Dante Puritans can go bum him behind a bike shed, maintain a certain visual simplicity that nudges the player towards that state of zen murderous flow. But the thing that made me give up on the game once and for all was Bayonetta herself. The cutscenes are laced with overt erotic violence, and witch tits every second utterance is innuendo, which is fine to a point. It's clearly a spoof, and I'm no prude. That opening cinematic is one of the most spectacularly endearingly dumb things I've ever seen. But there comes a point where you start to question, has she any other G-strings to her bow-legged nether regions? And it is then that you realize you're playing out the power fantasy of someone's wine-drunk aunt who could just never seem to keep a man. So Bayonetta can take it up the back door from Megatron for all I care. I'm gonna talk about another game with a female lead I can actually tolerate. The year is 2003 and Ubisoft are riding high. A very different Ubisoft from the decomposing whale carcass of a conglomerate we see before us today. No, in the eyes of most, they were hitting all the marks in that pre-Assassin's Cry era, with several big hits coming in quick succession, including Prince of Persia: Sands of Time, Splinter Cell, and
jumping out of planes and diving and fighting sharks.
And it was around this time that the loftily titled Beyond Good and Evil stepped into the spotlight. The game was developed internally by a small team of 30 headed by one Michel Ancel, the mind that gave us Rayman, PlayStation's answer to Mario, at least before the rabbits took over like a terminal fucking cancer. Apparently Ancel took inspiration from Studio Ghibli Productions and the media coverage surrounding 9/11. The game premiered at E3 2002 and did pretty badly. People were seemingly too caught up with Metroid Prime and the cutting-edge Doom 3. Cutting edge in the sense that it cut all the fucking life out of the Doom franchise. As the story goes, Project bg&e, as it was being called, was then drastically changed, cut down, and reworked. I say so tentatively because from what I can tell, every location in the trailer made its way into the final release. The only obvious thing they did was inject some growth hormones into the teeny bopper protagonist and unfuck her awful hairdo. Piss off. The game released in November 2003 to general critical praise, but sold about as well as model planes at September 11th memorials. We begin with Miss Protagonist Lady and her domesticated goat demon meditating peacefully on this peninsula. Then, before you've had a chance to ensure you haven't bought some world music based spin-off to Parappa the Rapper, the place is fucking nuked from orbit. They leg it back up to a lighthouse where an unpaid electricity bill stops Missy Elliott from putting up a shield. Because I guess electricity providers operate the same way as triad protection rackets in this universe. Payloads hit near some children who are then engulfed by these spiny bejeweled whatever the fucks. Leia defeats them with an array of mind-blowing space-age technology, by which I mean a stick. Just as she manages to save the young'uns, a tentacle shoots up from the ground and yanks her down to this frilled eye stalk. Yeah, I've seen this porno. It refers to her as Shawnee and induces some visions into her mind. This devolves into a tutorial boss boss fight, which I like as a way of introducing the core gameplay without patronizing the player. You know, press square to kick this malnourished fawn we've weighed down with slabs of lead. Although this fight is still basically doable with one finger, so long as you can wrap your head around what a dodge is to get out of the way of the one ranged beam attack. With the help of a rotund pigman compatriot, the creature is poked to death before it can impale any more Japanese schoolgirls. The pearl at its core taken as a trophy. The authorities, here called the Alpha Sections, show up after you've done so, and the press ambush Patience Phillips as she reaches the surface.
You guys are not what I'd call as fast as a speeding bullet. Keep doing nothing, and next time, there'll be nothing left here to save.
Cut! Hey, Pop, stay zen.
Get fucking told. They leave as abruptly as they arrived, after which our lead has the standard issue post-intro lapse in consciousness. Time for a little background, I think. This is Jade, a level-headed, tomboyish 20-something, working where opportunities arise as a freelance photojournalist. That's how the scale runs, isn't it? You're either employed or a freelance photojournalist. She wears baggy jeans, a rad crop top jacket combo, and the blue-green oceanic color scheme she has going on is, as the kids say, a mood. Jade isn't an especially standard archetypal hero, eschewing most notable cliches. Nor is she, being of the fairer gender, written as someone flappable badass feminist daydream, defeating all the evil men through sheer force of woke. She runs an orphanage in the lighthouse for a growing number of estranged children with this porky boy pey'j. He acts as a guardian figure to Jade, both in the parental and literal sense, having raised her an orphan himself. The island houses children whose parents have vanished in connection to the ongoing war between the citizens of this planet, Hylia, and the alien race we just saw, the Doms. Jade's first call of order when she wakes up is making some money to keep the shield on standby. To this end, her sassy computer friend Segundo hooks her up with a gig photographing wildlife for a conservation group. While this is just a means of progression here, your ability to cash in on the local flora and fauna carries on throughout the game. Most areas are populated with a number of unique animals, present singularly to be Pokemon snapped by Jade. This doesn't seem like much, considering most modern sandboxes have entire ecosystems built into their fucking bark textures, but it's a bigger deal in a game from over 15 years ago. The low poly environments of the time tended to be static entities, so consistently having some motion on screen other than the player character had a larger impact on immersion than you might think. A few voyeuristic armadillo upskirts and a paid bill later, the hangar door opens and you head down to Pey'j's workshop. There he can be found fixing a decoder, aka a good old-fashioned save point. There's a job offer on an M-disc waiting in the mail from a Mr. De Castellac. The job entails getting some pictures of a Dom species on the far side of Hylia. Pey'j is emphatically opposed to the idea, but concedes to their financial needs and agrees to accompany her. After kickstarting their battered hovercraft, they head off towards the cave, presumably leaving the orphans to reenact Lord of the Flies. You're not going 30 seconds before the engine eats shit, so a rescue craft drags you over to the Momago garage, conveniently situated
Only 300 meters away.
almost as if it was placed there as part of a set piece. The place is run by a trio of Rastafarian rhinos, and if you're looking for subtext to that, well, they operate a black market for ship parts in exchange for pearls, which is how you acquire a new motor. Then, just as it seems that the duo are back on track, everything goes into lockdown as this huge flying fishbone swoops down to take a dump into your Cheerios. So we now have a second tutorial boss fight, introducing the other prominent gameplay modality, vehicle piloting. You do all your traveling around the modestly sized overworld in this rust bucket, as well as the odd bit of ship combat. The hovercraft operates on robust tank controls, but seeing as I fortunately don't live in a fucking swamp, I can't really complain as to the accuracy of this. This boss fight is also fairly one note. The thing drops a few mines and has a sweeping attack, and can only be hit from behind like a prostitute in a welding mask. You grab another pearl afterwards, as becomes the norm, and make your way through the main hub location to Black Isle. After docking and checking in with Dr. Phil here, you begin traversing the game's first proper stage. For the most part, Beyond Good Souls displays consistently sound level design. What we have here is an action game in the Ocarina of Time mold, with some token platforming mechanics present almost obligatorily, but to call it an action platformer would be to call Chris Brown a ladies' man. Thankfully, the devs were aware that they weren't making Mario 64 from the Mirror universe, so the levels are designed with some bit of thought as to how to wring the most out of the bare bones control schemes. They exhibit some of the best qualities of linear levels, looping and sprawling back in on themselves so as to imply that they exist as part of a larger world, rather than a contrivedly direct hallway outside of which a player could not but imagine the cold void of binary space. Most areas are visually palatable, with bold contrasting colours in some and softer gradients in others, like a gay pride flag painted onto a piece of wet tissue paper. The pale blue caverns of the Black Isle Cave see Jade shimmying along scaffolding and pushing minecarts full of explosives, which leads neatly into the incorporation of the game's other semi-unique mechanic, the ability to command your follower to do certain actions. Pey'j can do a ground pound to bounce you up to elevated platforms, as well as to rise these glowing tits that Jade can use to knock down drawbridges. You also find a wrench a little ways in that Pey'j can use to cut through wire gratings. The whole thing is implemented seamlessly if slightly vestigially, but it at least elevates your +1 above the likes of Ashley from Resi 4, whose some contribution was getting decked and hiding in a bin. A few dead cucarachas later, you reach the chamber where the Dom's monsters reside. You snap a picture of what appears to be a vaguely insulting puppet show and send it back to Mr. de Caddyshack. And then, lo and behold, Punch and Judy were part of a big old fish monster. I fucking hate how this thing looks. The fact that the mouth protrudes back into the torso as opposed to away from it, like, you know, the evolutionary norm for every invertebrate ever, kinda pisses me off, especially considering how interesting most of the mobs look. This is the first boss fight with some meat to it, divided into 3 stages. They each involve Pey'j slamming the thing's head, you wailing on it, and then it slithery sliding out of its glory hole for some ranged attacks while you stave off some cronies. Dr. Evil glides in once the work is done and Jade goes off on him.
I got a bone to pick with your boss.
Mr. de Castellac never really existed. I think I owe you some explanations, Miss Jade.
I just don't see why that was necessary. He takes you on an equally unnecessary taxi ride, over the course of which he explains that he's an agent of the Iris Network, an underground activist group working to expose collusion between the Alpha sections and the Doms. The picture for Mr. Capri-Sun was an elaborate test to screen Jade for recruiting. The cabbie tells her to find them at the Akuda bar, before piloting his cubic meter of sheet metal off into the sunset. Of course you hover your ass over to the bar, for 'tis a video game, safe in the knowledge that there'll be no one to mourn the kids at the lighthouse when they starve to death. Hilariously, you can recite the passcode to every random spastic in the pedestrian district, Jade presumably not entirely clear on the concept of treason. In the bar, you head upstairs and give the passcode one last time to the place's resident cup shuffler. Just look at him go.
He likes to play catch. I asked him, can you catch these hands? He said yes, so I fucking hit him. What is the problem?
He gives you a key to one of the rooms, and one secret passage later, you're in the Iris hideout. Baldman introduces the team. We've got Sons of Archaism, Neko Girl, and Toru with a gastric band. You gather pretty quickly that the members present have the combined defensive capabilities of a high school newspaper team, and their one guy able to get shit done was captured at a Nutripills factory. His name is Double H, like if you divide Triple H by 3 and then multiply by...
A worldwide funny guy.
They send you out to the factory to snap some evidence, on the way to which you pick up some guided fucking ordnance to get past the sentries. The game has a bit of an obsession with codes, as in there's frequent terminals that you have to photograph in order to obtain their passcode from the literal governor. It seems the government of this planet holds sway wherever you go. Guess this is the communist utopia Marx was dreaming of. The first part of the stage is taken up finding a fuse to activate the central elevator. To this end, you knock a handful of bots around until eventually you stumble across Double H, held in some kind of suspended animation. You free him with a disc launcher you find in the same room, after which he follows you through areas Pey'j can't get to, cause he's a fucking lardarse. As you get back to the elevator, you're ambushed by this sentient snotball for another boss fight. It doesn't do much to stand out, save for some cool use of the camera during its diving attack. With some further exploration and the pulverizing of these deodorant sticks on legs, you get your hands on a fuse. On the way up, Pey'j hands Jade an M-disc. I don't know, probably his fucking mixtape or some bullshit.
Smell that?
Smells like foreshadowing. As Jade scouts ahead, getting her pictures of the alphas doing the bad thing, Pey'j gets a steel-toed enema before being carried off. Unable to do anything about it, Jade continues her mission through this much more heavily patrolled floor of the complex. This is where a certain fissure becomes apparent in the game's combat mechanics. Up until now, the combats had all the presence of France during World War II. There, but not really contributing. Every organic enemy goes down to the time-honored technique of jackhammering the attack button, while the bots go so far as to require you to pound them into submission before you commence punishment. Christ, is it hot in here. But the alpha sections, these motherfuckers will ice you in just a couple of hits, and have shields so that you can only get at them after making a dodge, which would be fine if the dodge was more reliable than job security at a major video gaming corporation. The fact that taking on more than one of these dudes has a high probability of a cold authoritarian train being run on Jade's polygonal ass reveals the game's true identity as more of a stealth affair, sneaking past patrols and taking out guards from behind where you can. The game shines when it leans on this aspect of its design, all the more since it doesn't restrict you from running in headlong if you have a minuscule attention span and a job interview at Platinum in 15 minutes. Unfortunately, the core gameplay wavers back and forth between stealthy fun times and the utterly hollow one-dimensional direct combat, much to the game's detriment. After collecting all the required evidence, Jade finds herself stuck in a room with a DOMS robot.
Hey, what the heck is this thing?
This boss fight is trash, to be frank. While I like that it continues incorporating your ally into the fight, the stun that occurs when both its legs are hit is so easy to pull off that the thing practically spends the whole fight on its ass immobile. Once it's been tossed down a shaft Palpatine style and you've gone back to the same goddamn reactor room to get a second fuse, cause when I pick up a quest item my first thought is always better find another one just to be safe. H starts fucking dying. The time limit is far too generous though, so you get him back to the Akuda with enough time left to catch up on a few chapters of Finnegan's Wake.
Double H reporting for duty. The Alpha sections have taken possession of the... They choose the... At your service.
Hello there, and thank you for watching. The script for this one was just a little bit too long to jam into one video, but hopefully you can look past your massive blue balls and enjoyed it. If so, I'd advise beating that subscribe button like it was a punching bag fashioned after your own respective protrusive genitalia. Follow me on Twitter if you want to hear me talk shit in 140 characters or less. I think I'm going to try and stream more on my Twitch channel, so stay tuned for that. And if you're so inclined, I have a Patreon where you can throw a couple of doubloons my way. Other than that, I'll thank you again for watching and bid you adieu.